Another week, another massacre. It's been 8 months. Red lines have been crossed. Babies have now been decapitated. And we continue to watch. After all eyes turned to Rafah, attacks on Nuseirat and Deir al-Balah have left us wondering if there is any hope for online movements to change things on the ground. I'm Anelise Borges, and this is The Stream. Maybe you are among those who posted this on their Instagram story. The AI-generated image was shared nearly 50 million times on social media after the massacre of civilians at a refugee camp in Rafah. But the outpouring of support online did little to change the reality for Palestinians across Gaza. We begin today's show in Rafah, from where 19-year-old Helmi Hirez shares his family's tragic tale of continuous loss and displacement.
This is Helmi Hirez.
And this is Mo.
This is our story. We're now talking to you from our tent in Khan Yunis City, Al-Mawasi area. We're originally from Gaza City. Our road to the south of Gaza Strip was filled with dangers. And sometimes in the road, we needed to jump over dead bodies just to don't walk on them. After 1 week from the day we left Gaza, our house in our Rimal neighborhood got bombed with 2 rockets. In that bombing, we lost 14 beloved family members. And our house became a pile of rubble. And after we found some stability in our relative's house in the center of Rafah city, on February 12th at 2:10 a.m., when the house next to us got bombed with 4 rockets, we got buried with the rubble. I got myself out alive. I got my brother out alive. And my father. And we start digging over our mother and our sister. We got our mother alive, breathing. Some guys took it to the hospital as fast as possible. But unfortunately, my mother didn't make it. She suffered from internal bleeding, and she passed away. After we buried our mother, we went to Khan Yunis City, Al-Mawasi area, in a refugees camp, living in a tent. After 2 months in Khan Yunis City, living this hard life, and 300 meters from where our tent is, got bombed, which destroyed our camp. Now we live a life that doesn't look like us. I'm a computer engineering student. My brother is it's a brilliant AI engineering student. We work in tech. We're very introverted. That's all what we know. We're not used to this life. It is very difficult to deal with it. So now we're homeless refugees. So we made this GoFundMe campaign to help us rebuild our life and reunite our family in a safe place, in hopes for the future. We lost the most precious thing in life, and we lost everything. It's just a continuous journey of losses.
And to reflect on the limits online campaigns have in terms of impacting realities on the ground, we are joined today by Ameera Kawash, an artist and researcher whose work looks into the impact of artificial intelligence on Palestinian lives and narratives. She's joining us from London. From Belfast, Farrah Koutteineh, founder of Key 48, a collective calling for the right of return for Palestinian refugees. And from Los Angeles, Dr. Mohamad Abdelfattah, a member of the Palestinian American Medical Association. Thank you all so much for joining us here on the stream today. Mohamad, let me start with you because you just came back from Gaza where you volunteered at the European hospital. What is your reaction now every time you hear news of these Israeli operations that result in massacres on the ground, when you see the pictures after witnessing the horrors of this war firsthand?
It's just extremely frustrating. I left and I'm here back in Los Angeles in my comfort zone, but I know all my colleagues are still living under the bombs, under the constant bombardment that has been nonstop. We saw just a consistent influx of children dead upon arrival, those with severe explosive injuries, burn injuries. And so I know their reality has not changed despite me being back home.
Mm-hmm. It has only gotten worse, I imagine. Ameera, let me ask you about this image, the artificial intelligence generated picture after the attack on that displacement camp in Rafah. Why do you think that particular image got so much attention?
I think there were several reasons for it. And whatever we're going to say, I just want to preface by saying that it shouldn't deflect the controversy around this image from the reality of what's happening on the ground in Gaza and what was happening on the day that that image went viral, which was the 10th massacre, just in the wake of the ICJ ruling that Israel should stop its military offensive immediately. So people were reacting to that. So that image was shared over 50 million times. Mm-hmm. And you know, one of the reasons is that because it was an AI-based image, the image-based text passed through censorship, and as well as because the image was generated, so it also passed through censorship that censors images of violence. So, you know, there were reasons tactically why that image went viral. It was shared by celebrities very early on as well. But you know, the controversy with it was that a lot of Palestinians and advocates felt that, you know, somehow Palestinians are going viral at this very key moment, but you know, continue to be invisible. So you know, that's
absolutely
long-standing.
Yeah, we'll talk more about the controversy precisely. Farrah, I want to get your take here because you've talked a lot about this controversy. Where the piece posted this on X, millions of people shared the AI-generated image of All Eyes on Rafah, and now Gaza needs your actual eyes. Gaza doesn't need shares of an AI-generated image when its real babies are being slaughtered on camera. At least 200 Palestinians were killed, 400 Palestinians were injured in less than 20 minutes in Nusayrat. What was your reaction, Farrah, when you saw the avalanche of shares of that AI-generated image that looks nothing like Gaza?
My initial reaction was shock, really, at how many shares this one story post with this AI-generated image had garnered. And then my immediate reaction was to make a post on Key 48 and to make sure people realize that everything is interconnected, and if anything that Palestinians want you to know is that every injustice is deeply interconnected in Palestine. The injustice in Palestine is not isolated, it's not disconnected, and it happens because injustice everywhere is continuing. And I made a post so people would kind of pick up on that vital and important message to kind of spark curiosity as to how all of these things are interconnected. Because after this AI-generated image was shared of All Eyes on Rafah, then we started seeing images of All Eyes on Sudan, All Eyes on Congo. And I wanted to spark a curiosity within people to see that everything is interconnected, but also at the same time to ignite a fury to act and to take this offline.
As Ameera was just talking about, many have criticized this AI image because it doesn't even begin to tell the whole story of this war. Here's author Frederick Joseph on TikTok.
This visually is not actually what's happening in Rafah, right? This is a pretty sanitized image, right? This is just encampments that spell out, or an encampment in tents that spell out All Eyes on Rafah. The reality of what's happening in Rafah and throughout all of Gaza at this point is it's mind-numbing atrocity, right? Like fire, beheaded children, decimated and desecrated bodies, right? This image is not Rafah. And I do think that's important to note because the image that's being shared is so sanitized versus what's actually happening, because what's actually happening will stay in the minds of people for the rest of time. And I do think it's important to call that out because Israel should be held accountable, because this is not what Rafah looks like. What Rafah looks like is hell.
Mohamad, can I get your thoughts on this?
You know, everyone that I spoke to in Gaza, everyone has been affected by this war, whether it be they lost their homes, whether they lost their family members, multiple family members. And what they kept telling me is when you get back home, make sure you keep telling our stories, keep talking about us, make sure that Gaza is in the news and being talked about in the media. So for me personally, when I saw this AI generated image and how widely it was shared, you know, I saw that as sort of telling their story, continuing to honor what they wanted, talking about Gaza and keeping it in the news. And so for me, I didn't have an issue with it. Yes, it's one picture. One picture is not going to tell the entire 8 months of the genocide. However, it is bringing attention to Gaza, and that's what they wanted. They told me that firsthand.
Razan agrees with you. She says there's nothing wrong with sharing a picture that doesn't tell the whole story as long as it draws people in. Take a listen.
I also think that there is a time and a place for something that's easily digestible, easily shareable, representative, that is not going to get suppressed or blocked for being too gory or anything like that, that can be shared across algorithms. But it's also an easy way for the masses to endorse their support for preventing the atrocities that are in Rafah, which I think that is like invaluable. So to be able to say that like over 40 million people stand in support with the Palestinians is a huge thing to say. And so I think we need to not waste time being like, you know, don't post this when you can post, you know, the actual images. Do both. If this is the thing that gets people started, this is not the end all be all, but this is the thing that introduces people or finally brings people on the fence into this topic, then they can start to do their research. Then you can share all the other things with them as well.
Ameera, there's also the argument that the fact that this image is so sanitized is precisely why people shared it so widely, because it was perhaps easier to engage with, to post it. Can you talk a little bit more about that, and also about the ethical implications when sharing AI-generated imagery to describe and to depict humanitarian crisis?
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to say, first of all, that I agree with the previous speaker that, you know, this image is a prompt. We shouldn't get too stuck on it. But one of the things it should prompt is, why was this image, why did a lot of Palestinians advocates have strong reactions to it? And one is because there is this, it plays into a history of very long-standing media bias in which Palestinian lived experience and testimony has been systematically denied and repressed, you know, by a pro-Israel media. And so I think one of the prompts should be understanding how we really need to start, you know, dismantling this bias, and why we should believe Palestinians when they talk about their lived experience and testimonies, especially now when there's so many really brave citizen journalists on the ground in Gaza. So, and I think to the second point about generative AI images, you know, one of the things I'm looking at my research is just how anti-Palestinian bias translates into generative AI media. So, for example, one of the things that you don't see in these kind of new tropes that are emerging is that you don't see Israel being held visually accountable for the catastrophes and scenes of mass devastation and violence. So in a lot of Gen AI media, you'll see, for example, the prompt Palestinian child in a city would be an image of a child in a kind of urban wasteland, but there's no signs of the perpetrator. There is no occupier, and Israel is not being held visually accountable in these images, which also reflects the ways in which Israel is not being held accountable in general for this genocide and for the ongoing Nakba. So I do think, yeah.
Sorry to interrupt. It's very interesting, yeah, because indeed it's almost like that is their reality. There's no one causing this. It just is, right?
Exactly. It seems to be that it's this sort of default state that, you know, in a lot of Gen AI images that I'm seeing, that Palestinians just by default live in these scenes of mass devastation.
Farrah, I want to turn back to what you said earlier. You said the sharing of this image shocked you, but also prompted you to act. You worked on that post, on that graph, a post that you said you actually had been working on for months. And with the attack and the AI picture being shared, you finally finished it. Can you tell us a little bit more about the post and the message behind it?
Yeah, so I had been working for several months on this post. I make infographics that kind of condense information to make it somewhat accessible to everyone, you know, in 10 slides or less on Instagram. And I had been working on this post for the past few months. You know, viewing what's happening in Palestine has been unbearable. And also as a Palestinian in the diaspora, it's often more case than not, you feel you can be feeling hopeless or helpless. And I wanted to create a post to empower people and to make people realize that everything is connected, and that I ended up finishing this post, and all I did was actually just change the front cover of the post to make it, to have the image of the AllEyesonRafah post, because I wanted the 40 million or 50 million, whoever posted this to their stories, I wanted them to then, prompt them, as we said previously, to prompt them to learn more, to prompt them to see, how all injustice is interconnected, and for change to happen in Palestine, change must happen everywhere else. And if there's anything, as a Palestinian, I would hope that they would pick up on after sharing this image, if this was the first image they had ever shared on Palestine, or their first introduction to the genocide happening in Palestine, then the first message is this is all interconnected. And to stand for Palestine means to stand for all.
You talk about listening to Palestinian voices. You talk about stop condemning the Hamas attack. You talk about the fact that Palestine is not a issue, but is the issue. It is a very interesting and very comprehensive message.
I decided to list a few points that I found to be, of the utmost importance. First of all, to listen to Palestinians, because often we're seeing non-Palestinian voices speak on Palestine, whether it be Piers Morgan, Fox News, or the New York Times, and there is an absence of any kind of Palestinian voice speaking on Palestine. It's minimizing us to racist stereotypes and to sound bites, where if we are invited onto these news shows, we are just forced for the whole duration of that time on that show to condemn October 7th, and we're not actually heard or listened to on anything else. And we're more than capable to explain our struggle, to eloquently and simply put how our struggle is in the genocide happening in Palestine. And Palestinian suffering is almost twofold, because we have the material oppression on the ground of colonization, occupation, and genocide, and then we have the misconstruing of our struggle by non-Palestinian voices. Those non-Palestinian voices, misconstruing our realities of colonization. So I thought it'd be, important to, the utmost point in the first slide of that post is to listen to Palestinians, where, to shortly follow with to stop condemning October 7th, because whenever they invite a Palestinian guest, the first thing is to force them or coerce them into condemning October 7th. And it really shows just how far detached we are from recent history. We're forcing Palestinians to condemn October 7th. It's ridiculous. It's absurd. We're not condemning the Irish people to, condemn, the Easter Rising, their resistance to 800 years of British oppression, condemning Algerians for resisting brutal French colonization, so on and so forth. And I wanted to include also that video by Malcolm X that I put on the post, where he so eloquently puts, we don't owe non-violence to a violent oppressor. And that Palestinian resistance is legitimate, it's enshrined in international law, it's enshrined in UN Resolution 3246. And Palestinians have been subject to 76 years of genocide, of colonization, their land stolen, their people massacred, to be imprisoned under occupation, and as barbaric as Israel, peaceful means. Although we have been peaceful, Palestinians have a long history of peaceful resistance. Boycotts were met with arrest, and artists were met with imprisonment and assassinations, and we've peacefully protested from Land Day in 1976 to the Great March of Return in 2018, and those peaceful protests were met with massacres.
Absolutely.
So I wanted to emphasize that.
To emphasize that, I want to bring a point that you made there in terms of listening to Palestinian voices, but also other ways to convey the reality of the war without necessarily showing graphic images. Journalist Duaa Tuaima does that quite brilliantly. Take a look.
I started recording since the war started, I decided to recording children because don't have anything to do, because the war, they said, the occupation army said, we are trying to kill Hamas, trying to kill them. But I saw people, those children, you killed those children, you make these children hungry. Why you tell me you decide to kill Hamas? Those children, it's like another children in the world. They have dreams. They have they need a life who can play and eat what they want and laugh and have love. But because the war, they didn't have this life. You know, the kids who eat the apple, her name is Rital. I record this video for her because she was first time eat apple from since the war start. It's like 7 months. She's the first time eat the apple. The kids, the children, Anhar, the child Anhar. This is Anhar. She was taught me. She's angry because she wants her toys. She lost her toys in her home under the rubble. And and the kids Saba. She was told me she dream all the time about the army occupation killed her. She dream about that. If I have a message to just be, we have a dreams. We are not numbers. We are deserve life, a beautiful life.
It's crazy to even have to state that, right? That we all deserve a better life, that Palestinians deserve a better life. Ameera, Farrah and Mohamad, I wanted you guys to close this show for me now with a conclusion in terms of what is next? What happens now after All Eyes on Rafah? Ameera, you go first.
Yeah, I mean, All Eyes on Rafah, I think that was one of the things in the messaging, All Eyes on Rafah, now what? That doesn't seem to be enough, that All Eyes on Rafah. People should be calling for a ceasefire. That hasn't worked. People should really be putting pressure on governments to sanction Israel. So I think that was a first step for a lot of people. And the next thing is really to intensify the messaging and to escalate, because it's not working. All eyes really are not enough.
Mm-hmm. Mohamad, what is your view here?
I mean, my experience was that this war is a war on children. Majority of the victims in the hospital were children. Those seeking shelter at the hospital, outside, the thousands of people, majority of them were children, just playing. A lot of them looking malnourished, haven't eaten in days. And so, yeah, I would echo the same message. We need to continue to talk about what's happening in Gaza and bring an end to it, demand an end to it. This is American taxpayer dollars that are paying for these bombs. And so we need to have continuous efforts in America predominantly to bring an end to this. And that was one thing that the people in Gaza told me, that the protests in America is what's giving them hope. So we need to continue to be in the streets and continue to demand our government to end this.
You make a very important point. Farrah, a final thought from you.
Just that, Palestine is the issue. Palestine isn't a single issue. Palestine is often the stepping stone, the first stepping stone, which makes people realize just how much injustice is occurring in this world. And people look at what's happening in Palestine now and seeing this genocide unfold and just thinking, how can this happen in 2024, without realizing that injustice is happening everywhere else. And we all need to come together. We shouldn't be having separate protests in the same city, for Congo, for Sudan, for Palestine. We should all be coming together and resisting all of this oppression. And just, a kind of a final thought as well is, often we say free Palestine, and that it's Palestine that frees us. And we need to realize Palestine is freeing all of us, and that Palestine makes us see that everything in this world must change, and we must be the ones who change it.
Beautifully put. I want to thank you, Farrah, but also you, Ameera, and Mohamad, for joining us here on the stream today. and also Helmi and Duaa for contributing to this episode. If you have a comment about our show, you can talk to us on social media. If you have a topic that you'd like to flag for us, you can use the hashtag or the handle AJStream and we'll look into it. Thank you so much for watching. Take care, and I'll see you soon.